Wimansa.
Hello and welcome to Wimalaratana Initiative. Wimalaratana Initiative is an independent think tank in Sri Lanka which provides a platform for critical analysis, intellectual dialogue, and policy advocacy on economic, political, and social issues. We are pleased to present you another episode of this interview series under the theme Rising China. Through this interview series, Wimalaratana brings about the views of intellectuals and experts on various dimensions of the miraculous development experience of China by drawing parallels for Sri Lanka. This interview is with Dr. Reverend Wijithapure Wimalaratana Thero, a Buddhist priest, a professor in economics from the University of Colombo, to talk about economic growth of China. Here is Dr. Wimalaratana, professor in economics from the University of Colombo, to carry out the discussion with Professor Reverend Wimalaratana Thero.
Thank you, Reverend Sir, for joining this Wimalaratana initiative to talk about the miraculous economic growth of China today under the theme Rising China. I know that you have been teaching subjects like world economy and comparative economic development and related subjects related to the world economic affairs. So I know that you are one of the best persons in the country, one of the best scholars in the country to talk about this topic, miraculous economic growth of China. So my first question is, before we come to talk about growth, what are the important turning points of the Chinese history?
Thank you, Professor Wimalaratana. When you look at historical important turning points of People's Republic of China, we can identify many. Due to time restriction, we can highlight a few of them. One of the most important turning point of communist China is communist revolution. That was 1949, led by Mao Zedong. This revolution created communist China. Official name is People's Republic of China. Thereafter, Mao and Communist Party members wanted to transform Chinese economy quickly, so that they introduced Great Leap Forward in their 5-year plan, that was 1958-62 plan, to transform country's agriculture, collectivization, and rapid growth. Similarly, industrial development. Those were expected from Great Leap Forward. China has implemented number of 5-year plans. Now they are implementing 14th 5-year plan. Thereafter, another important point would be Cultural Revolution of 1966 to 1976. Through Cultural Revolution, communist rulers wanted to protect China from foreign interferences, especially from capitalist interferences, and also they identified certain traditional practices hindering economic progress, so that they want to purge all those things. That was the objective of Cultural Revolution, 66 to 1976. And thereafter, and the turning point was transforming Chinese communist system to market economy reforms that introduced in 1978 Deng Xiaoping. That was the important turning point of recent economic miracle of China. Thereafter, in 2010, China became the second largest economy in the world. Before that, this position was held by Japan. Again, 2001, China joined the World Trade Organization, WTO, became an equal player in the global economy. Those were some of the important points you would identify when you look at post-communist China, not before that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for giving us a very interesting brief account of the historical evolution of modern China. In fact, the most important changes took place after the policy reforms in 1978, and so that we know that throughout last 20, 30 years, China has been growing fast, and it has been the second largest economy so far, and it's not sooner or later it's going to be the largest economy in the world. So the problem that I have to ask you is, the world economy is also important for China, but why China is important for the world economy?
Well, that is also quite important question you raised by Professor Wimalaratana. When you look at the global population, you would see that roughly little over 7.5 billion population, little over 7.5. When you look at China, China has the 1.4 billion population, huge. It is followed by India and USA and Indonesia. And also, when you look at Chinese GDP, China is gradually overtaking the number one, USA. When you look at purchasing power parity, IMF data indicates that China overtook United States sometime back. That was 2014. So China has already become the number one economy in the world. Again, when you look at Chinese external reserves, some of the countries in the world is struggling now because they do not have external reserves. When you look at the Chinese external reserves, it has nearly 3.5 trillion US dollars, the largest external reserves in the world. And also, when you look at IMF, SDR, value is decided by basket of 5 currencies. Chinese renminbi brought to this basket in 2016 because China is a big player in the global economy. It is also the 4th largest country in physical size after Russia, Canada, and USA, and number one food producer in the world. Number one food producer in the world, and number one industrial producer in the world. So China is economic powerhouse in the world. Without China, you cannot survive now. Thank you.
Yes. Now that also brings me to ask another question. That now that's exactly why we call it a miraculous economic growth of China, and we can't talk about the world economy without Chinese economy today. But what are the contributory factors for this miracle? If you take 1 or 2 minutes to answer this question, the contributory factors, I know that there are a list of factors we can talk about ours, but the major contributory factors, if we list out them, what are those factors?
Major contributory factors for Chinese fast economic growth, miracle. Historically, China was one of the world's foremost economic power for more than 2 millennia, from the 1st century up to 19th century. It was the largest. Now we look at China has the largest population as also cheapest labor. Some countries are there now, India and some other developing countries. But after introducing Deng Xiaoping's economic openness, China had huge cheap labor force. People with hard-working attitudes compared to many other countries. Chinese people work really, really hard. They are prepared to accept any challenge. And when you look at Chinese at ground level, they do not have a lot of obstacles regarding labor force and other areas. For example, China has exceptional practice that is called 996. What is that? They start work at 9 and end work at 9. Morning 9 and evening 9. 6 stands for what? 6 days per week. They have to work 6 days per week, starting morning 9, ending 9 p.m. So that lot of work to be done. Huge local market, since population is huge and also per capita income is going up, economic growth is there, fast growing, so that local market is also expanding rapidly. External market is important. Other than export market, global market, China has huge local market. In addition to that, a smoothly running society. It doesn't have democracy, no agitations, pages, no demand for high salaries, a smooth running society. Today's system you can see tomorrow, no stoppage, everything is going smoothly. One party with one administration, one policy, one direction. Nothing is changing. And China contributes heavily to the global economy, as we discussed earlier. Similarly, now they are talking about the Asian century. This century belongs to Asia, and power is moving from the west to the east. And according to some estimates, Asia will be the largest, I would say before that, even 2040s, Asia will become, according to some estimates, 52% contribution to global economy in 2050. China is the biggest contributor for this Asian contribution. So because of China, other Asian countries can work together to be the largest economy in the world in Asian continent.
Yes, come back to, I want to come back to that question again, but before that, you reference a couple of important points. One is this, the size of the economy and the discipline society, discipline workforce. So these factors, when I look at these factors, I remember that Russia, it has also been a similar country which had a socialist economy, socialist political system under the Soviet Union regime, and also a large country. But Russia Russia in fact failed to achieve that kind of miraculous growth. Another country I remember is actually India. Until the recent past, India could not maintain high growth, and India has also been a big country. So when we look at these two countries, Russia and India and some other big countries in the world, what makes that difference for China?
Well, Professor Abhiratna, you are raising a quite valid point here. When you look at Russia, it was the largest, most powerful economy and country when the Cold War was going on. What happened? Socialism broke down at the end of 1980s, 1989, Berlin Wall removed, and they say that was the beginning of the falling of Soviet bloc. And from 1990s, you would see disintegration of socialism. And earlier it was USSR, thereafter it was Russia again. So why Russia failed to achieve fast economic growth rate? Why India failed? You can add little more. Why some of the East Asian countries, former socialist countries, former allies of USSR failed to achieve higher growth rate like China? Two major reasons we can identify here. One is they started reforms 10 years after China. China started reforms 1978, at the end of 1978. Actually, some would say real reforms you would see from the beginning of 1980s. And Russia started in 1990s, early 1990s. And India also did the same. Started reforms in early 1990s. And also former socialist bloc countries in East Europe, they also started much later. That is one side of the story. The major point here, I feel, you may be also agreeing with me. What is the major important point? None of those countries have dictatorship like China has. In China, everything moving smoothly. When you look at those countries, India, lot of internal problems, and also Russia, lot of problems are there. Under Putin, he's having a strong rule, iron hand. Still, he has to face a lot of problems with internal issues and also external issues. Similarly, you would find in former socialist bloc countries in East Europe. And also, when you look at India, lot of cultural differences, cultural factors affecting adversely. India did not implement something like cultural revolution, what happened in China. So that all those factors, strikes, stoppages, lot of things are going on, and opposition parties are creating a lot of unnecessary issues, so that they are moving slowly, not like in China. I think you got a brief answer to the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Sir. Now, that also brings us to an important, very interesting question to be discussed. Now, many countries in the world, including Sri Lanka, I am bringing Sri Lanka into our discussion right now. We don't have many of those factors that you talk about when we look at the miraculous economic growth of China. Now, does it mean that countries like Sri Lanka, we are small countries, and then we have democracies and 5-year election cycles, and with all these things, trade union actions, cultural diversity, and all these things. Does it mean that we don't have any hope about our future?
Well, we can't say like that exactly. There are some countries with a lot of issues moving to one goal, one direction. We need a visionary leadership and uninterrupted major economic policy, social policy. I mean, national policy without changing quickly. You are changing everything all of a sudden, and overnight you change a lot of things. You can't develop the business confidence when you are making a lot of changes, and so that private sector is not coming in. I mean, FDI not coming in. Even local private sector is not happy. They cannot prepare a long-term plan. So some of them are moving away from your country if you do not have visionary leadership, visionary rule, and acceptable business promoting environment. Those are missing in many countries. In case of Sri Lanka, it doesn't have a lot of natural resources. When you look at countries with natural resources, huge natural resource base in African countries, Democratic Republic of Congo, and also so many countries are there in Africa, include Nigeria. When you look at those countries, not moving fast because of they do not have smoothly running societies with benevolent dictatorship. And developing countries, if you want to transform them, they should have benevolent dictatorship rather than looking at own family, own people, own territory, own constituency. Those are the things you would find in developing countries, so that you are stagnating or going down or going very, very slowly. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you mentioned about very, very important 2 points. One is about the leadership issue, and the second thing is about the discipline issue as a country, as a society, to move forward fast. But however, while we talk about these 2 basic issues that many countries in Asia that we have faced it today, now Chinese economic growth is also important for each and everyone, because China has been the topic of discussion in not only in Asia, but also in other parts of the world because of the importance of Chinese growth for the economic growth of other countries. At the same time, China is also preparing for this new Silk Road, that is the Belt and Road Initiative. So all these international policies of China, how do we get the benefit out of this policy? And are we going to be the colonies of China, as some people talk about, or are we going to benefit from Chinese economic expansion in the world, and so that giving incentives for our growth as well?
Well, it is also quite interesting question, relevant to many countries, developing countries in the world, not essentially to Sri Lanka. When you look at OBOR policies, One Belt, One Road policy, so it was a concept of current President Xi Jinping. He proposed this in 2013. You know that there was all Silk Road through the continent to Europe, from China to Europe, through continental Asia, to the land. Now they are proposing land and sea routes. Earlier, I pointed out that China has accumulated $3.5 trillion external reserves. Still, China is growing. China can lend to other countries to promote these OBOR policies. Well, you can borrow from China. When you borrow from IMF or other developed countries, conditions are there, conditionalities are there. When you are borrowing from the open market, money market, or when you borrow from China, conditions are not there. You can borrow if you invest them in productive sector. Without waste, you can come out of the debt trap, what they are calling in the world now, Chinese debt trap. If you are wasting what you borrow, you are in a great trouble. Even in Sri Lanka, we have huge troubles now because of we have not invested borrowed money productively, not only from China, other borrowed money from this development bonds from the global money market. When you do not invest your money in productive sector, it is natural you will end up with a lot of problems. When you look at the household, if a household, head of the household, all members of the household waste their borrowed money, they have to sell their house and go away somewhere. Similarly, when you waste borrowed money, you have to sell some of your properties and you are not receiving accepted results out of those borrowed money. It is not the fault of China. It is fault of borrowers and the way they spend money. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. We have that much time, more time to discuss this very important issue. So that I'm going to wind up right now, and it's the final message is actually not only that we can learn from China how they did things, although some of the points may not be applied to our situation, but obviously there is one important side of the lessons that we can learn, that is actually the visionary leadership and the disciplined society. That is, those are the two important points that highlighted. The second important factor that I wanted to bring out of your discussion, your explanation, is that Chinese economic growth, Chinese miraculous economic growth can be a positive factor which can bring about benefits to other countries also, like Sri Lanka. So we have to be prepared for that, to get that benefit, and also we should have that visionary leadership and the disciplined society, even to benefit from Chinese economic miracle. So with that note, we will wind up for today's discussion, and thank you, Reverend Sir, for joining the Vimansa initiative.
Thank you, Professor Wimalaratana.